few more seconds. All right, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you, Jesus. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 26, 2023 meeting of the CB6 Business Affairs and Licensing Committee. My name is Claire Brennan, and I am the chair of this committee. Tonight, we are joined by District Manager Jesus Perez. Thank you for being here, Jesus. This meeting is called to order at 6:33 p.m. As a reminder, New York State law now requires community board members to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. If your camera is not on and your name not properly displayed, you cannot count towards quorum. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. We need a volunteer, shockingly, to take minutes at tonight's meeting. If you can take minutes, please raise your hand.
Well, I would volunteer, but I still owe you minutes from October, so.
It's okay, John.
I think that would be
No worries.
a vacuous gesture.
I see Anton's hand up. Oh, you're on mute. Now I think you could. I think we can hear you now. Oh, now you're on mute again, but.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Anton. That's very much appreciated.
So it's Anton taking minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Anton. We will now take attendance by roll call. Jesus will conduct the roll call.
All right. All right, folks, I'm going to call everyone's name one by one. If you will please state for the record whether that you are present, that would be appreciated. Keep in mind, I'm actually looking at a different screen, so I'm not actually seeing you. So if you could actually audibly say that you are here, that would help a lot. Claire Brennan.
I'm here.
Thank you. Paige Judge. Paige Judge. All right, I don't
see her.
Okay, I don't hear Paige. Anton Malner.
Here.
Thank you. Seema Shah will join us later, perhaps. Susan Steinberg.
Here.
Thank you. John Keller.
Present.
Thank you. Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Thank you. Jason Littman.
Present.
Thank you. We have 6 members present, but only 5 with cameras on. That still makes quorum, so we are good to proceed.
Great. Now we will adopt the agenda, which was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda, excuse me, as stated. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand now through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes of the October 27th meeting and the November 29th committee meetings are still being drafted. That's okay, but there will be no minutes for adoption at tonight's meeting. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules that you all are familiar with already, but I'll repeat them. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, excuse me, please raise your hand through Zoom. The chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. chat should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated on the record during the meeting. Excuse me. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so you can speak. Committee members are required by the state open meetings law to have their Zoom cameras on and your first and last name displayed during tonight's entire meeting from call to order to adjournment. If you must step away from your computer briefly, you are required to leave your camera on. Okay, so now we'll get into committee business. And the first item on tonight's agenda is a follow-up discussion from one that we had back in May. Daisy here is from the New York Healthy Nail Salons Coalition. And if you weren't at the meeting or you need a refresher, this is a group of organizers and workers who are fighting for the Nail Salon Minimum Standards Council Act, which Daisy will explain more about, but we kind of met with them at the end of last session, and we're just welcoming them back now to hear like a little follow-up. And I think there are some, action steps that we as a committee and also like individuals on the call can take to support this group. So Daisy is here and is going to talk us through some updates. Daisy, do you have the ability to share your screen, or do you want us to? Yeah, so you can take it away.
I believe I do. Thank you for having me back. I'm Daisy Chung. I'm the director of the New York Healthy Nail Salons Coalition. And I remember some of the faces on this call. So I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a moment. Oh, I cannot share my screen. It's been disabled.
Try it now.
All right, great. All right.
Right.
Can you all see the?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Great.
All right. So I'm here to just, give a follow-up to the All Hands In campaign, where we're advocating for a new state bill called the Nail Salon Minimum Standards Council Act. And we just introduced it last session. So this is the second year of the coalition advocating for passage of this bill. I'll give a little bit of background on like why we're doing this. I know it's been a while since it's been many months since we last met. Oh, there it is. But I know it's a lot of information on this screen, but Cornell actually did a study, the first academic study on the state of the nail salon industry in New York, and found, some very troubling data that, we, within the coalition have known for a long time, right, through our organizing with nail salon workers. So, the average, nail tech in New York makes below the minimum wage. And, most of the workers in the industry identify as women. 85% identify as women in the workforce, and 73% are, Asian workers, and about 21% are Latinx workers in the industry. And this is pretty unique, to like the New York area and other parts of the country. It looks different demographically. And, I think one thing why New York is such an important place for this kind of change to take place is because we have the highest concentration of nail technicians in the entire country. And so we really want to change some of these conditions that workers are working in. Another concerning aspect of the work that's happening in nail salons is that folks are working with very toxic chemicals, right? That have been long documented to cause illnesses like cancer, asthma, and a whole host of reproductive health issues that are particularly, unique to women, and, things like complications during pregnancy. There's a much higher prevalence than the general population of people who can become pregnant, right? So complications during pregnancy, severe menstrual pain, and, very sadly, they are at higher risk for babies born with birth defects in this industry. And, part of this graph that you see here was the result of a survey study that we did with nail techs last year. So, what we're really trying to do, and we're organizing with nail techs, all over New York. They speak all different languages and come from diverse communities, and they're all looking to change this industry. And I think, one thing that we always want to stress is that nail techs are, professional licensed workers, right? They have to go through many hours of training. This is a very specific set of skills, and workers, can't make ends meet, and, they aren't able to retire with dignity. And so we're really looking to change that with the Nail Salon Minimum Standards Council Act. And so I won't play this video, but there's a whole video where workers themselves, and unfortunately, we were hoping to have a nail salon worker with us today, but Thursday nights are a pretty busy time in nail salons. And so they couldn't make it. There is a video. I can send a link later on that, Claire, if you'd like to share with the rest of the committee, so that you can hear in their own words about, some of the hardships that workers are facing. But the bill was introduced last January. And the Senate sponsor is Jessica Ramos from Queens, and the Assembly sponsor is Harry Bronson from Rochester. And what it does is this bill it doesn't create a set of standards, right? It doesn't say this is what the wage needs to be, this is, what scheduling needs to look like. It doesn't set any standards. What it does is create a structure so that workers, small business owners, and government representatives can come together at the same table and really talk about the problems and identify the solutions to these problems in this industry. And, those, whatever folks deliberate on, folks will vote on and make recommendations to the Commissioner of Labor, who will be the ultimate, decider, right, decision maker of whether to adopt those standards in New York. And then a second thing that the bill would do would be to establish, and this committee would be completely separate. It would be made up of economic experts who will study the industry. What are the operating costs, right? What do businesses need to charge in order to be, to be able to comply with all the laws and still maintain profitability? And that committee will recommend a fair minimum pricing model for nail services within in salons across the state. And the reason why this is included in the bill is that particularly for the downstate area, and this is like New York City and Long Island, prices have been extremely low, so low that we have the lowest prices for nail services in the entire country. And, a lot of people are pretty stunned by that because the math just doesn't add up, right? It's expensive, right, to run a business in New York. Just rent alone, is pretty expensive. And so, a lot of times what we hear from, these are from small business owners in the salon, in the nail salon industry, say, I can't raise my prices because the 3 nail salons on the same block don't want to do that and are continuing to drive down prices, right? And so you lose customers, right, to those businesses. And so we really want to reframe this conversation around like, we want nail services to be affordable and accessible to folks, to New Yorkers, but we also have to differentiate that, from cheap, right? Cheap services and exploitative services. And so that's a pathway of doing that. So, some of the impacts that we want to see from this bill, right? If it passes, we're hoping that this is going to build a new foundation for this industry. The violations of labor law and other really terrible working conditions have been happening for a very long time, right? This is not something that's happened yesterday, but, years and years in the making that we really need to undo. We want to empower all the stakeholders, and these are workers and employers. We want them to come together and find solutions because they understand the unique needs of this industry. And then we also want to make sure there's fair pricing so that employers are not stuck right between a rock and a hard place to really figure out, how am I going to stay open? How am I going to comply with the laws when I continuously have to slash my prices, right? So we really want to reverse that trend. And then finally, there's many ways that individuals and institutions can support this campaign. So we ask folks, hey, like we all have state representatives, and ask them to co-sponsor this bill, donate or volunteer for the campaign. There are many opportunities for volunteering, and then joining us at events and actions. And these are just, some things you could do as individuals. And as institutions, I think the most important thing is to show that there is broad support, right? And we've been getting support from, many different kinds of institutions. And so these are letters of support and resolutions, right? And other kinds of like written formal actions that demonstrate institutional support for this kind of change. So I'll stop there. I spoke for a while. So, if there's any questions, I'll stop sharing the screen so I can see if folks raise their hands.
Thank you so much, Daisy. Appreciate you coming back. The thing that was striking to me, and I was thinking about it today when I was, getting ready for your presentation, it is, cheap labor, and I kind of like that word I try not to use, but it really is exploitive and, is affordable, but it's way underpriced. And I have mentioned this last time, get my nails done a lot and would definitely be willing to pay more because after hearing, what happens in all of the risks there are in this field for workers, it's just really awful. But I see Jason has his hand up.
Just a quick question. Why, and I might be naive, but like, why don't the salons have to pay the workers minimum wage, or do they, and it's just not enforced in the way like waiters are?
Yeah, so it's not enforced, right? In a lot of instances, people aren't being paid the proper wage. And then another way that, so we've eliminated the tipped minimum wage in the nail salon industry. So that was a few years ago where, that was eliminated for this industry. And, like some of the things that we hear from workers, and, we ask them like, hey, how is this getting implemented on the ground? And so some workers that have responded like, yes, I'm getting paid $15 an hour, right? The minimum wage. But then what happens is that they get all of their hours cut, right? And so like, there's, right. So it's, for us, the issue is so like systemic that if we can't just deal with wages, we got to deal with scheduling, right? And if we deal with scheduling, we got to deal with, other aspects like breaks, right? Workers not receiving breaks, right? So there's so many layers. And so we think that this is the best way to like, let's bring all of these problems to the table so folks can, really like figure them out in a, through a collaborative process.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think they rely heavily on tips too, right? Is that something that you've heard?
Yeah, they do, they can still receive tips, as, just part of their service. But now it's like, you don't need to rely on tips, right, to meet the minimum wage.
Are there any other questions from folks? John?
Yeah, just briefly, I mean, where does the legislation stand? I mean, which committee is it with? I mean, has it gotten out of committee? What's going on?
Yeah, last session was really devoted. We wanted folks to have like a good understanding of what this bill does, just because there's no bill like this, right, in the state. So it's a very unique piece of legislation. And so we've done a lot, like we've met with tons of legislators last session. And, this year is really our push to get this out of the Labor Committee. So it's in the Labor Committee for both the Senate and Assembly. And get it to the floor.
What is the prognosis? I mean, there's usually a view on these things. I mean, is there an impetus to move it, or do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, I think, many of the legislators that we've spoken with, most folks are conscious, right, of what the conditions are in nail salons. So very few times we'll have to like go through a whole discussion about that. So I think, policymakers do recognize that there are some serious issues that are happening within the industry. And I think it helps that, like, when we tell folks like, listen, this is not, we're not proposing any sort of like new standard or new regulation, right, in terms of, labor policy that folks need to follow. It's really just bringing people together. And I think that really resonates with members of the legislature. I think, one other kind of positive outcome is that there was a similar bill, now it's law, out in California that dealt with fast food workers, right? So they created a fast food industry council. And so that passed, that was finally signed into law on Labor Day in September of last year. And, when we mentioned that, I think folks realize like, oh, okay, this is a kind of policy that we can pursue, right? Because I think there's always this hesitance, right, within the legislature when things seem like, whoa, wait, this seems very new, like, can we do this? And so I think that also really helped folks, feel like, oh, okay, like, New York can also do this.
Thank you.
Thank you. A question that I had is kind of thinking about a timeline. I think a lot of movements like this are unpredictable, but, should it be brought to the table and, the council's established, like, is there kind of more long-term timeline that would, where you would hope that these standards that the committee comes up with are implemented?
Just to clarify, Claire, you mean if the bill passes, like
Right.
what's that period of implementation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there are specific timeframes for when how long the work can happen and, So once the council is selected, there's a whole nominating process, right? Just so that it's representative of workers and employers throughout the state, demographically representative of the industry, right? Like we really wanted to make sure that like different voices are heard at this table. So once that's set up, they have 6 months to meet, hold hearings, right? So again, right, it's like the council will be deliberating, but there'll be hearings all over the state, right? In New York City, upstate, to hear from workers and employers that aren't on the council and want to provide feedback and comments. So it's about 6 months. And then the Commissioner of Labor also gets some time. It's about, I believe it's 30 to 60 days to respond to those recommendations and make decisions on whether to adopt or reject.
Right. That was clarifying. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Let me see if a member of the public has a question. Oh, there's no one else here. So I think you answered the committee's questions sufficiently, so we appreciate that. Just thinking about the action items that you had pulled up towards the end of your presentation, I think definitely as individuals, folks can go to your website. I'll send around a follow-up. I think someone put it in the chat actually already, the video that you had mentioned, but I'm not sure if we as a committee want to kind of resolve to write a resolution in favor of the act. I can't say that or put it on the floor myself, but I would definitely be willing to support anyone who wanted to bring it to the floor and work with people on a resolution, if that's something we as a committee wanted to do. I'm realizing now, I think that I'm probably the only committee member who is here. Susan is here, but who gets my nails done? Maybe not, but it is something that is personal to me, just because I'm a customer and want to see better conditions for these workers. But if not, that's okay too. We can all, yeah, Susan says that she would be happy to write a resolution. Again, I think she can't count for quorum or anything, but if I would be happy to work on that resolution with Susan if we decide to. But Kevin?
What would the resolution be more specifically, if you could?
Yeah, I think we can look into it more. Daisy has come twice now and kind of presented the situation. So obviously background on the reality for these workers, but I think, the title of it would probably be something like resolution in support of the Nail Salon Minimum Standards Council Act, excuse me. So then they can kind of use it when they visit legislators, saying there is support here. Also, I was thinking kind of, other boards who kind of have, who pay attention to, what other boards are doing. Maybe they're not even aware of this issue, and, they can kind of be tuned in and maybe write an additional resolution kind of in support. So you have more citywide support for the resolution, for the act. But yeah, just a resolution in support of the Nail Salon Minimum Standards Council Act. Is what I was thinking.
Sounds like you're passionate about it, and this is great that you've given it the floor. I'd be more than happy to propose such a resolution. And it sounds like you said Susan was already on board as well. So formally, I'd like to present that resolution. We should vote on it.
Thank you, Kevin. I think we need a second. For that.
Second.
Okay, and John, thank you for seconding it. So I guess we can vote on this one if you don't mind doing the roll again, Jesus. So we would be voting on a resolution in favor of, I have to memorize this, but the Nail Salon Minimum Standards Council Act.
All right. Okay, so that was a motion to support Assembly Bill A378, Senate Bill S1800, the Nail Salon Minimum Standards Council Act. I will call each individual member's name one by one. If you would please tell me whether you are in favor, opposed, abstaining, or not entitled to vote. That would be very helpful. Claire Brennan.
In favor.
Thank you. Paige Judge.
Still don't see Paige.
Not here. All right. Anton Molnar.
In favor.
All right. Thank you. Seema Shah. Has she appeared?
Not yet.
Okay. Susan Steinberg.
Am I allowed to say in favor?
That's a good point. But
Must I say not entitled?
we'll say nothing for right now. But John Keller.
In favor.
Thank you. Sorry, I can't actually see your screens right now. So Kevin O'Keefe.
I'm in favor.
Thank you. Jason Littman.
In favor?
All right. Was that in favor?
Yes. In
Okay.
favor.
With 5 members voting in favor, none opposed, no abstentions, and none not entitled, this motion does carry and will proceed on to the full board meeting in February.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Daisy. So we'll definitely be in touch. Excuse me, if you don't mind sending your presentation to me in the board office, that would be helpful. And yes, Susan and I will work on the resolution together. And thank you, Susan, for offering to help.
Yeah,
You're
thank
welcome.
you. I will definitely send the presentation and thank you so much for all of your support and, for listening to me, and the presentation. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to working with you all.
Thanks, Daisy.
All right.
Have a good
thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, so we will move on to the second item on the agenda. It's a new on-premises license for Kips Bay Music Bar LLC, doing business as to be determined at 519 Second Avenue. Mr. Flynn, are you
Yes.
here? Great.
I am.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Do you mind just walking us through the application?
Not at all. This is an on-premise liquor license application for 519 Second Avenue. It is a bar with a light food menu, much the same as the previous licensee who is there right now. They will feature live Irish and folk music the same way as done right now. There will be no DJ. When there isn't live music, it'll be background music. The hours of operation will be 11 a.m. to 4 a.m., the same as they are now, 7 days a week. The capacity of the premise is 74. There are 12 tables and approximately 40 seats. There is one bar with 10 stools. There is no outdoor space. The premise is soundproofed, and 2 of the principals live in the immediate area within a few blocks from the premise. If you have any other questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you. Okay. Jesus, are you able to pull up the Google view of this? Or if you let me share, I have it pulled up too, if whatever's easier.
Yes, I have it here.
Thank you very much. So I think did you mention sidewalk seating in your questionnaire? Was that a mistake?
No, they said that they put down that, do you have any intention of going for it in the future?
Uh-huh.
And when sidewalk cafes come back through Department of Consumer Affairs, they may very well go forward with one if they meet the requirements. But right now, there is no outside area part of this application.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
No problem.
Kevin?
Yes, I'm curious. I'm very familiar with this place. It's actually legendary. I think it's been around for 36 years. Is Stevie Duggan still involved in ownership? Is that when you said new proprietor, is he moving on?
I can answer that one. He was not permitted to renew the lease from the current owner of the building. We were able to, so we are going to be carrying on the tradition. And they were going to turn it into a restaurant, but that deal fell apart. And we were able to come in and save the place.
So and I had read in the Irish Voice that it was actually going to turn into a bank. So hopefully that's off the radar as well.
Oh, no. That's about as accurate as the New York Post. As far as that one statement, not the Irish Times, that one statement is as accurate as something in the New York Post. No, that is not what's going on. We are waiting. We have finished negotiating the lease. We are waiting for the DocuSign and the wire transfer, which was supposed to happen today, but got bumped and will probably happen tomorrow. So everything will be consummated with the lease within 24 hours in all likelihood.
Okay, so the spirit of the Patties will stay alive as far as this session.
Good God, yes, that is exactly the plan. That is my wife and I live on 30th and 2nd.
Yes, sir. Do you mind just introducing yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Joshua Irwin.
Desi Murray.
Desi Murray. So my wife and I and Desmond are going to be partners there. Desmond has worked there for about 2 years managing the bar now.
Yes, 2 years I've been running the place, yes.
So we love the place. We've been going there for years. We were just floored when we heard it was leaving. And when we had the opportunity to swoop in, we did. So we're going to change very little. I joke that it doesn't need a gut demo job. It needs a hug. So we're just going to give it a hug. We have a contractor that's going to paint the place up, restore it, change almost nothing.
Just clean it up outside and make the place look nice.
And we're also going to... Yeah.
Thank you for that background. Just one more experience, and thank you, Claire, for saying what's introduced you. Can you give us a sense of your bar or restaurant experience? I know in the application it said the 3 new principals do have that experience.
Yeah, Desmond has the most, obviously. You can go ahead.
Yes, I've been in the neighborhood for 20 years. I was managing the Joshua Tree for like 18, 19 years. I was also managing Van Diemen's on 29th Street on 3rd Avenue. Before that, I was on a place on 55th Street back in the 90s called Manhattan Country Club. So I have a good experience of managing, bartending, running a business properly,
And
keeping control of customers.
And as for me, I bar backed and bartended during undergraduate and law school to help pay for that. As far as running a business, I've owned my own law firm for 15 years now. So I sort of know how to run a business also. My wife is in marketing, digital marketing, so she's going to handle that aspect of it. And she has a business degree, so she's going to help count the money. So we have all the bases covered.
Sounds like a good team.
Thank you.
Jesus,
Appreciate that.
did you
Thank
have a question?
Yes, just to clarify, I did, in preparing this material for the committee, I did find an article saying that Patty Riley's was closing in a few months. When the questionnaire was submitted, the doing business as was listed as Patty Riley's. So is the name Patty Riley's going to stay?
We are working on that.
Well-
That is our intention. We're working on that right now. It is not public that we are doing this because we want Mr. Duggan to be able to enjoy his last days there. So that's a work in progress. If it's not Patty Riley's, it will be something very recognizably similar. There's no trademark or anything associated with Patty Riley's Music Bar.
So as of this time, it's TBD, and then we'll see.
Yes,
Yeah,
Oh, Patty's still alive, right? So Patty would certainly have some name and likeness, I'm sure. Legal aspects, right? From blocking his name to be on it.
that's not something he's ever done for any Patty Riley's bar anywhere in Ireland or the US. He's
Okay.
never enforced it.
Okay, just for everybody that doesn't know, he's a member of the band, the Dubliners, who's very iconic.
that's
Thank you.
correct, yes.
Yep.
Thank you for the history. So one more question. Is Patty Riley's currently open till 4 a.m.?
Yes,
Yes,
that's what their
yes.
license is currently.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the committee? Seeing
I have
none.
the-
Oh,
I
yeah.
have the mocked up resolution.
Okay. So is there a motion?
Motion, no objection.
John and Anton, are you seconding that?
Second.
Thank you so much. So we'll keep it as TBD, the name. And so it's Desmond and also Joshua Irwin is here.
It's Irwin with an I.
Mhm. IRWIN.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so it's a resolution of no objection
Mhm.
or new on-premises license for Kips Bay Music Bar LLC, doing business as TBD at 519 Second Avenue. Present today are Terrence R. Flynn, attorney, Desmond Murray, principal, Joshua Irwin, principal. And today's date is January 26, 2023. The proposed establishment will be a bar / tavern featuring live Irish and folk music, as well as open mic karaoke and a light food menu. This was taken from the 30-day notice and also, I believe, from the remarks that Mr. Flynn gave. Is this an accurate representation of the establishment?
Yes.
Okay. And the establishment proposes to operate from 11 a.m. to 4 a.m. 7 days a week. Is this an accurate representation?
Yes.
All right, committee, back to you. Any
Okay.
stipulations or other things to put in?
I think we can delete that unless we want to say something about the historic. I think we could just delete it. And there were no members of the community who had comments for or against.
Looks like Kevin requests the floor.
Yeah, I know this is standard, but I just wanted to get it on the record that because it is new ownership, that there will be something posted outside the establishment for the public to be able to call a manager at any hour in case there's any issues with regarding sound and such. Is that something we can say on the record with the new principles?
We have there's no problem with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you want us to write that in the resolution, whereas the establishment will have the name and contact information of a manager on duty posted outside for the public to see?
Well, posting it is tough. Sometimes people rip down things, but what we'll do is provide it to the community board if you wish. Or if guys, are you gonna have a website?
Yes,
We can post it on the website.
Well, our chair is, I think, familiar, right? Others do it when I'm posting it on the inside of the glass and such.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a big sign, just like And then if it gets, it could just be a piece of paper, like right
Okay.
at the entrance or something. We usually require this of new establishments, and I think it's on our website. It would be great if you could include it on your website too, but
Yeah. We'll find a place to put it right
thank
by
you.
in the window.
That's great. Do you want to write that in, Kevin, or is it okay that we just?
I'll leave it to the chair. Thanks, Claire.
Okay. I guess we could say what you had just said, Jesus. Just to have it.
Whereas the establishment will
Post.
post the name and contact information of the manager
Mhm.
on duty in a publicly visible place at a in a place visible to the public from the outside.
Great, thank you, Jesus.
Is everyone okay with this language?
It seems so.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So then today's date is the 26th, and we have no objection to this application.
Okay. I'll fill that in later since that's
Sounds good.
standard.
Yes, thank you. And I think, typically we kind of just give people a second to raise their hand if they object to it. That's how we've done it in the past. So I think in this, we can continue that practice. So if anyone objects to this resolution, you can raise your hand through Zoom now. Otherwise, this motion passes unanimously. So we can add that later as well.
Well, we actually do have to keep the number. So at the very least, I'm going
Okay.
to note the number.
Oh,
So
right. Well,
for
also,
the-
yeah, that's actually, sorry, a good
yeah,
point.
For the
'Cause-
record, we have Anton, Paige, Jason, Seema, Claire, John, Kevin. So that is 7 members of this committee voted by unanimous consent to advance this resolution. So that is 7 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, and 0 not entitled.
Thank you. Yes, great point. And welcome Seema and Paige. Good to see you both. And thank you, all 3 of you, for being here tonight and letting us know the situation. We wish you the best with the hug renovation and, moving forward.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for keeping the Patty spirit alive,
Thanks for letting us keep it
Yeah,
alive.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
proper. Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Good night.
Good night.
Great. So next up is a new temporary on-premises license for Zulfikar Mediterranean Cuisine, Inc., doing business as Alibaba Mediterranean Cuisine at 224 East 53rd Street. And Kathleen, are you joining us?
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Yes.
Good evening.
Okay,
yeah,
so
go ahead.
I'll just go on. Yes. So this is a new Mediterranean license, 224 East 53rd. It is presently Angelo Bellini's, which is an Italian restaurant that's been there for some time. I actually did the original license for Angelo Bellini's. This is between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. There are there's only a service bar, no customer bar, 27 tables and 58 seats, no outdoor seating. There is recorded music only, no live music, no DJs. The hours of operation will be the same as Angelo Bellini's, which is 10 to 10. However, my client did indicate that he thought maybe in the summer he'd like to open on Fridays and Saturdays to 11. So I did indicate on the questionnaire for Fridays and Saturdays to 11, but that won't happen right away. That's going to maybe happen later. And that's basically it. The owner of Turk Duggan is the owner of the establishment. She is a solo owner. She has managed restaurants for, her husband has several restaurants. They're all Mediterranean restaurants in the city. And she's managed restaurants for him, I would say for the last 15 years. She also opened up her own restaurant. I did a liquor license for that one as well. But she closed it rather quickly, so that liquor license is no longer active. And that's really it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you very much. Very clear presentation. And I see everything's reflected on the questionnaire as well. So I will open it up to the committee if they have any questions. So, I guess, yeah, Jason, go ahead.
I just have a quick question, and this might be a Claire question. Kathleen, you mentioned that her husband has a lot of restaurants. Do you by any chance know the name of her husband?
Yeah. Now, I don't know. I'm trying to, you have to excuse me, I'm trying to get to my screen, but I don't know how to get rid of your screen so I can look at my screen. So let me just, there we go. Okay, thank you. Let me tell you, I'm doing this from St. Martin. I'm on vacation, so I don't
know.
And it was the last minute thing last night. They said you wanted to be part of it. I said, absolutely. So I don't have my actual file. So I'm looking at my computer file. So
I'm sorry.
Yes.
We'll make it quick.
So he has a Zolfagar Mediterranean cuisine at no, that's this one. I'm sorry. He has a TD restaurant was her restaurant at 1030 2nd Avenue. That she closed. And Alibaba Terrace is one of his, I didn't list all of his restaurants, but that's one of his restaurants at 862 2nd Avenue. And that's been there since 2015. I know he has 2 other restaurants because I do the renewals for them, but offhand, I just can't remember what they are. And they're all Mediterranean restaurants.
Do you know his name?
Yes, I do. I have to look it up. I'm sorry. 1 second. Okay. So his name is Ali Riza. I know him as Ali, but Aliriza Duggan, Doggan.
Thank you. So Claire, I do a lot of business in my day job with Ollie, so you'll have to let me know if I'm allowed to participate in my vote for that. I've done business with him in the past and in the current in my day job.
Noted. Thank you for your honesty and letting us know. I think in this situation, you'll just be noted as like abstain for cause. And it's good that you said that on the record as well, because that's the other step in this instance. It like is a conflict of interest.
I just figure, because I know that we're a smaller group, so I know the votes count.
That's a good point. I think we should be okay because we got some additional folks joining us. So thank you very much. Are there any other questions? So yeah, actually, I just saw on the street view is that there is a open dining structure, but I think on the questionnaire there was no, there's not going to be any open dining. Is the open dining structure still there? What's that status? I don't know.
Well, that's interesting. I'm not really aware of it. I asked him and he said there's not going to be any outdoor dining at all. So I'm not really sure. I haven't visited that establishment recently to see if it is still there or not. But his position is that he's not going to have outdoor dining.
Okay, noted. Yeah, it could be an old street view too.
Or it could be there from the owner presently. I'm not sure.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, are there any other questions? Are there any motions?
I'd like to call to question.
Thanks, Seema. I think we still need like a motion to resolve one way or the other.
I'll make a
sorry,
motion with no objection.
Okay,
I'll second with the stipulation that there be no outdoor dining.
Oh, no, I would agree with that.
that can definitely be included in the resolution. Okay, so John brought the vote and Anton seconded it. I'll let Jesus just finish typing that whereas.
Resolution of no objection for new on-premises license as well as a temporary retail permit for Sulfikar Mediterranean Cuisine Incorporated, doing business as Alibaba Mediterranean Cuisine at 224 East 53rd Street. Is that an accurate representation?
Yes, that's correct.
Whereas Kathleen E. Negri Strathopoulos, attorney, appeared before the Business Affairs Council Committee today, January 26, 2023. Is that an accurate representation?
Yes, it is.
Whereas the proposed establishment is a Mediterranean restaurant with a full food menu.
That's correct.
Okay. Whereas the establishment proposes to operate from 11:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and from 11:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Is this accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
Whereas the establishment will not include any outdoor dining. Are we all comfortable with that?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Whereas no members of the community had any comments for or against, it looks like Anton requests the floor.
Yes, quick question. At the corner of, 862 Second Avenue, there was a restaurant called Alibaba Turkish. Is there any issues in terms of trademarks in naming the new restaurant Alibaba?
No, that might have even been her husband's restaurant at one point, but I'm not aware of any trademarks, and her husband has several Alibaba restaurants.
Okay.
So I think that's what they just always name their restaurants.
Thank you.
Okay, well, the rest of it is all uniform stuff, so I can handle that offline. But if everyone is comfortable with the clauses that we have already indicated here, and if there are no other stipulations or other language to add.
I think, right, yes. If you are not voting in affirmation of this resolution, you can raise your hand now. And I think we already mentioned that Jason, yes.
Not entitled.
Not entitled. But for everyone else, it seems. Paige, you're on mute though. We can't hear you. I think you're still on mute. And I'll ask you to unmute.
Okay, I'm sorry. Because of prior dealings with her husband and things like that in front of this committee, I abstain.
Okay.
Abstain or not entitled?
Well, wouldn't I be entitled to vote? I don't have any relationship with him. I want to abstain.
Okay.
Due to prior history.
Okay, just making clear.
Thank you, Paige.
All right, given that there are a few other kinds of votes, maybe we should just do a standard roll call vote for this one.
I'm fine with that. Yep, thanks.
All right, folks. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are in favor, opposed, abstain, or abstain for cause. Rather, not entitled. Claire Brennan.
In favor.
Thank you. Paige Judge.
Abstain.
Thank you. Anton Molnar. Anton Molnar. I can't see you guys if you're.
I think now you're on mute, Anton.
In favor.
Oh, there you
Thank you. Thank you, Anton. Seema Shah.
In favor.
Thank you. John Keller.
In favor.
Thank you. Kevin O'Keefe.
In favor.
Thank you. Jason Littman.
Not entitled.
Thank you. With 5 members voting in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention, and 1 not entitled, this motion does carry and will proceed on to the full board meeting in February.
Thank you, Jesus, and thank you, Kathleen. Sorry that you had to be here on
That's okay.
vacation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay. Those were all of the licenses that we had for this evening. So next up, as promised and mentioned in the last meeting, and also full board, we as a committee are going to have a discussion of unlicensed smoke shops in our district. And John graciously agreed to lead the discussion and kind of fill us in on some background. He, along with Elfie and I, have been discussing this issue, but John has really been taking the charge here. So I thank you, John, and I hand you the floor.
Thank you, and I'll be as brief as possible. Jesus, could you put up the excluded slides, the PowerPoint, and I'll go through it very quickly.
Yes.
It's by way of background.
Okay, 1 second.
Okay, so last week, Dale Brewer, as chair of the New York City Council's Committee on Oversight and Investigation, chaired a joint hearing of 3 city council committees, as I mentioned, at full board oversight, her committee on investigation, health, and consumer and worker protection, and the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection is the city entity that will be in dealing with this issue on behalf of the mayor and the city. Whereas the Office of OCM, Office of Cannabis Management, is dealing with it on behalf of the state and has primary regulatory authority here. We can just keep it going. And basically, this just summarizes the act. New York State Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act was enacted in law in March of 2021. And the reason I make that point is that this law has been legal to possess and use cannabis since March of 2021. And one can observe that when that happened, right at the time that that law took effect, we had a governor who was otherwise occupied, Governor Cuomo, and a mayor in New York City who was leaving office and thinking about running for Congress. So that becomes material. Why don't we go to the next slide? The Office of Cannabis Management was set up by Governor Hochul, and Governor Hochul is fully credited with doing that promptly when she took office. And the OCM has been working hard to living up to the values and goals of the law, which were stated on the prior page. The first retail dispensary has been opened. It's owned by a nonprofit that's reinvesting its profits into services it deploys to help New Yorkers. And more legal shops will open, and that just actually happened earlier this week. So now there are 2 legal shops operating in New York City. We could go to the next slide, thanks. And I've left Senator Krueger's comments in quotes here for a reason, because she was very strong on making these points, and I want to just reiterate them. We had the expectation that then Governor Cuomo would move quickly to set up OCM, but that didn't happen. In fact, the Cannabis Control Board wasn't appointed until September, when Governor Hochul quickly took action after taking office. It was during that 6-month delay that we saw the first illicit operators begin to open, and they've only gained traction since. In fact, there are now 1,400 illicit operators in New York City, and 2 legitimate operators. While local law enforcement, including authorities here in New York, have a role to play in shutting these operators down, and the sheriff has certainly been doing that, they didn't initially move to act, and instead looked to the state for guidance, but with no office in place, there was no one to provide that guidance. By the time OCM had the beginning of an enforcement team, the illicit operators were already entrenched. We can move to the next slide. So OCM is using its existing tools to take on these shops, but I hope, as Senator Krueger said, and once again I'll leave it in quotes, I hope that New York City Police Department also steps up its efforts to curb this activity by enforcing the penal law offenses being committed, particularly offenses related to sales to minors. There are barriers to enforcement that have been erected by law enforcement and others who are reluctant to engage. I want to be very clear with all of you that criminal offenses for the conduct you see across the city still exist. They were not wiped away when we ended prohibition. If we go to the next slide. And Senator Krueger made the point that possession of more than 5 pounds of cannabis is a felony. Sale of more than 16 ounces is a felony. Sale to a minor is a felony. And while some New York City police precincts, in Senator Krueger's words, understand this, others seem to have wrongly concluded that all cannabis-related activity is now legal and they have no role to play. This is all to give you a sense of the complexity of what we're dealing with here. If we go to the next slide. There's no question these operators must be shut down. They're endangering public health. They're putting consumers in danger, selling to young people. And the law is very clear. You can't open within 500 feet of a school or 200 feet of a house of worship. And they don't contribute to an equitable industry, which the mayor has certainly been attempting to make happen here. I've closely followed as OCM began with an education-first approach to ensure that illegal operators and consumers were aware of the parameters of the new law and understand that although we ended prohibition, there are still consequences to operating illegal. Next slide. So Senator Krueger goes on to emphasize that she presented a bill in last year to step up the enforcement, but that it was introduced late in the session and was not passed by the Assembly, and now working closely with Assembly Leader Peoples-Stokes in the governor's office to reach agreement. And according to Senator Krueger's office, that agreement has been substantially reached. So there is a bill that is with the governor that will come forth on this, and we're waiting, which is also relevant to see that legislation. We can move on to the next slide quickly. I'm not calling, none of us are calling for a return to prohibition, but we want to make sure that we all understand that those criminal offenses still exist. And we left those offenses in the law for a reason. I think that's about it. Jesus, is there one more slide? So I want to make a couple of quick comments and then open it to discussion.
That's the final slide.
Okay, all right. So there's a lot of agreement among elected officials that this is a bad thing that's happening right now. But as one senior city council staff person said to me, you know, we watched a shop across from our office get raided and the product seized, and all they did was restock. And you know, there are lawyers who are working to prolong the period of time that it takes for them to be shut down or fined. They're fined every day, but the business is lucrative enough that they stay in business without while still paying the fines. So this leaves us with two situations. One is we are still waiting to see the legislation that the governor and assembly have, and even Senator Krueger's office hasn't seen it, will finally produce and bring forward on this. And the mayor, as is being pointed out in the comment, has already he's held press conferences on this, and he's enforcing this through the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection via contacts there through Senator Krueger's office at this point. So this is just by way of saying that this is a uphill battle. We are going to pass a resolution. It makes no sense to pass a resolution that doesn't have, you know, new legislation in view and doesn't emphasize its support of that legislation. And in talking to senior staff members of city council members, they are at a quandary as to exactly what they can do legally. In my testimony, which I presented on my own behalf and not on behalf of any committee or board of CD6 because we didn't have a vote, I urged that we, you know, as several council members are exploring, that the public nuisance law be applied to the landlords who allow this to be these entities to do business, you know, in their buildings, and they're exploring, you know, whether that's something that might come out. I mean, everyone is trying to find ways to focus on this and make it helpful. And my committee, John DeRico, is our new vice chair, is working to craft a resolution that takes everything into consideration at the state and city level. But it still leaves us with 1,400 shops that are operating illegally and 2 that are operating legally. Wow. And we have, my primary focus as we do this is that we don't want this stuff sold to minors. And we don't want these stores operating within 500 feet of the school or 200 feet of a house of worship. And that's where this committee comes to bear. OCM was originally going to be part of the State Liquor Authority. And but it is now, Governor Hochul has set it up as a separate agency or department, reported office, I guess, reporting directly to her. And clearly, this committee will want to have a say in, how licenses, as it does with the State Liquor Authority, are granted in the zone. Now, one of the things we're working on is a map of where each of these shops is in the CB6 zone. So I'm going to stop there because I could continue for a long time, and we're already well past an hour into this meeting, and take any questions from members of the committee. I don't think we have any members of the public around tonight, but I'll take any questions from members of the committee. Oh, Susan, there's a question in chat. Let me bring it up here. How do I know whether they are selling cannabis? Well, first of all, unless it's one of the two that are, the second part of that question is easily answered. How do I know whether an establishment is legal or illegal? Unless it's one of the two that have been widely heralded, whose opening has been widely heralded, and they are selling THC related products, they are illegal. That's basically it. And how do we know whether they're selling? I've actually started walking into smoke shops in my neighborhood and sort of just innocently asking, are you selling this stuff? And they, yeah. And I say, well, you shouldn't be. That's doing a lot of good. Anyway, so that's the answer to those two questions. And Tom. Claire, I yield the floor back to Claire, and Claire should recognize, or do you want me to recognize people?
Either way. It's
And
fine.
Tom, thank you.
Yeah, these are illegal shops. I mean,
Yeah.
there are laws to shut down illegal businesses.
Yeah.
Why is there not more enforcement?
Well, that's what Senator Kruger was wrestling with in her remarks. Some people, the context I tried to give here, and that's the question that is perfectly legitimate. The context I tried to give was the law was passed in March. The OCM didn't even exist until the fall of that year. And, so they just sprung up. And some precincts, according to Senator Kruger, I do not have this evidence myself, but according to Senator Kruger, some precincts just said that, well, it's legal. So we're not going to go after the shops. And once again, that's based on her comments. Kevin.
To Susan's point, how do you know they're selling? Well, because they tell you they are in advertising outside the store. That's how you know. And I think that that's really going to have to be one of the places that you need to crack down on is advertising. I don't want to get into the whole, even though it's very important, marketing towards kids. But clearly they're saying they're selling cannabis out front and big, sometimes lit signs. There's one right across from the 69th Regiment Armory on Lexington saying they're selling cannabis in a lit sign that they spend probably a couple $1,000s for. So I would imagine that we need to take a look at advertising and promotion from these stores.
Yeah, there's a lot of anecdotal, I can see Jason has his hand up, but there's a lot of anecdotal reports. There was one report of the store, which I can't verify, in Battery Park City that was handing out brownies to the kids on the street. The kids.
And even dispensary, somebody will use the word dispensary, and just like in New York State, you can't use the word
Jason,
unless you're a non-profit. There should be blockage of using the word dispensary.
Jason.
Yeah, from what I understand, also having listened to the hearing, is that that because a lot of Black and brown people were arrested and put into prisons in the past because of marijuana, a lot of the NYPD doesn't want to go after businesses also that can give optics of a repeat of what they're trying to fix in today's era. And also, from what I understand, the NYPD it isn't clear on who has a legal license and who doesn't. And a lot of the illegal stuff that they can make arrests for are based on if they witness a sale, and they're not witnessing sales and there's not more than 5 pounds on display. So it is very murky. And when there is no enforcement rules that are out there. And when it first came on, I believe the city wanted the state to enforce it and the state wanted the city to enforce it, and the NYPD didn't want to focus on that. So I know they did a study of the 1,400 all across the New York City. I think it would be great to figure out and see in our community board, how many there are. I think, as per Susan's questions, every new smoke shop that is opening up is selling THC.
I think you can assume,
that everyone that's
since we're on
calling
YouTube, I'm being a little careful as to how I word it, but I think that's a fair assumption. And I think it's the city itself is, even city council members are wrestling with exactly what they can, do at this point in terms of they're talking to lawyers and trying to figure out, what we can do at the city level that has teeth on this. And one of the things that has been pointed out is the public nuisance statute, which would apply to landlords. But yeah, if you see a smoke shop and they say they're not selling, they might be not selling, I guess. But in general, I think the assumption is that they are.
And the legal
once
ones
again-
the legal ones that are out there are very in close proximity to our community board. The two legal
Right.
ones. That
Well,
ask
there are
for
two.
things
There are
that
two
we need
legal
to-
ones right now. Right, one, that's all there are, and the others are illegal, and they get fined on a daily basis, and they keep operating. The product gets seized, and they restock. So there's a whole complex set of things that need to happen here that I was not aware of when we first started this journey, and people are trying to navigate ways. Anton's question is the logical question. Hey, it's against the law. Why can they do it? Well, some have chosen not to enforce it, as you pointed out, or it was pointed out at Gail's meeting, Councilmember Brewer's meeting. The state wanted the city to enforce it. The city wanted the state to enforce it. And then there's a whole racial equity question that's a legitimate concern. The main concern is, as Mayor Adams pointed out in his press conference on this, that he has created a mechanism to enable people who were convicted of possessing and sent to prison, or jail at least, for possessing small amounts of cannabis under under prior regulations, and they're being given priority to get these licenses. But the gray market is shouldering them out there. If you talk to people on the street, they're bad mouthing the product, the NY product. I mean, it's really it's quite a it's a situation that is a matter of the law being in place and not being followed. But we're going to move ahead with a very strong resolution on this. But we really want to engage further with our electeds as we do that. I've told all of their staffs that we will consult with them as we develop this and move ahead. Okay, Claire, do you have any, Sina?
I just have a quick question. You mentioned, John, that it's all THC products are illegal. Is that true? Because THC has been around for a while.
Well, I guess it's if you have a hemp license, you can sell CBD related products legally if you have a hemp license. THC is, as my understanding, is regulated under the new cannabis regulation, and that is supposed to be covered by MRTA.
Okay, that's helpful to know, because THC I know has been around for like more than just this gap of this donut hole of March to September. THC has been around for like several years at this point. So I'm just wondering.
Some of it is legally sold through medical marijuana, dispensaries. Yes.
Okay. And so the last question is, you're just we're just having the conversation today, but the goal is for you to write something, like write a resolution. And then
I am drafting a resolution on this, which will include a map of all of the stores in the CB6 zone, the smoke shops that are operating illegally and have been cited. And I want the resolution to be as meaningful as possible, And to do that, I want it to be informed by the best thinking in the city council, as well as best thinking in the legislature, and most importantly by, the legislation that the governor and the assembly and the Senate are apparently have reached consensus on, but no one has seen yet.
Okay, cool.
That's where we're going. And to further, I'll take it that if I don't see anything like that happening, we'll just go ahead with a resolution without, seeing anything from this legislature or the assembly, because what's really important here is that so many people are concerned about this, especially parents. I mean, I have said often, and I apologize for repeating it if I've said it at the full board, but this has the makings of a political storm. I mean, you have a wedge issue, which is legalization of marijuana, and some people, I supported legalization. I've been very closely involved with advocates for legalization of marijuana over the years, and then you have mad parents. So that's a wedge issue. Not everybody agrees on that, but it happened. It's the law. And you have pissed off parents, pardon my French. And the one thing you don't want to mess with, I've learned in my 13 years of working with New York City schools, you don't want to deal with mad parents, and parents are mad about this. So
John, sorry, just my last question is that are we having the same regulations as related to the sale of cigarettes and alcohol for this, meaning the same amount of feet away that the other categories?
And the cannabis, the marijuana, our MRTA, MRTA, is very clear on 500 feet and 200 feet. Claire, what is it on alcohol? For a school? Once again, I know there's a difference between on-premises sale, use of alcohol, and the sale of alcohol. How many feet is it under the SLA? I'm just trying to recall that.
Yeah, I just want to, my point with this question is to just be as equitable as possible with the other categories of, substances that are regulated, namely cigarettes and alcohol. So if it's the same, I'm completely fine with it. If it's more punitive in any way, I would love to know that fact.
Well, the law is there. It's 130 odd pages long, and it is clearly more difficult to sell. You can sell cigarettes within 500 feet of a school. You can't sell cannabis within 500 feet of a school, and you cannot sell alcohol within, I believe it's 500 feet. I'm just not sure whether it's 500 or 200 feet of the school.
500 feet. I just looked.
500. Thanks. So yes, it is more. It is more similar to the restrictions placed on alcohol than cigarettes. To answer specifically your question. Alcohol is not supposed to be sold to minors. You're not supposed to sell vaping equipment to minors, to anyone under 21. And I'm the father of two teenagers, so at least they were teenagers until 2 days ago. Now they're 20, which I can't believe, but that's another part. But as the father of teenagers, I know that this stuff that teenagers know where the stores that'll sell the vaping products. They know the stores that will sell the gummy bears that are laced with THC, and they sure as heck know where they can get alcohol. So the whole point of the legal, and I've been deeply involved with the people in supporting legalization for a long time. The point of regulating this was so that, it could be controlled and taxed. And that is not, that's what we're wrestling with, how to make sure that happens. Paul? Kevin.
I'm just going to underscore what John said. It is I'm a parent as well, 12-year-old twins and a 15-year-old. This is an issue. And what's happening is the principals can't even legislate it in most cases, because the kids will do it in a closed stall Obviously, if you're a principal or a teacher, you're not allowed to go in and open up a stall. This is rampant, and you're absolutely right, John. They know exactly where to go if they want to. They know the stores that will not ask for IDs. This is pretty rampant, and I'm not exaggerating. This is the talk of the school halls, certainly among administrators. What are we going to do about these illegal sales at smoke shops? So it's just going to keep getting, I think, stronger and stronger, regardless of how much enforcement the state throws behind it. I'm glad we're taking this up.
Yeah, this is a wave that we're trying to. The reason I'm waiting on the resolution is only because I want to be at the head of the wave. But if I discover that people are delaying, getting this legislation out of Albany, for example, then I think we're going to have to take a firmer approach on it, as a board. But I want to give everyone a chance to get this out. Seema.
Yeah, I just, my concerns are, even as not a parent, I obviously don't support illegal business activity, right? Like none of us do, because we're on our community board and we care about our community. So it doesn't matter if you're a parent or not, you don't want to support illegal business activity. I do want to be very clear around the parameters of what we're asking for in the resolution. So I think until I see something, I'm not sure what we're commenting on, because if we're commenting on illegal business activity, that's one thing. If we're commenting on, sale to minors, that doesn't matter where the business is located. Like if a business is doing that, it could be 5 blocks away or 7 blocks away, right? It doesn't really matter. And so I just want to be clear that I don't want this to be punitive. I think it's a new industry. I do support, obviously goes without saying, this, stopping illegal business activity. But I want to see something before I kind of comment on it further.
No, that's exactly what we're trying to do here, is craft something that captures all of that. And I will send you Senator Krueger's testimony, because she actually makes those distinctions in there. I mean, this is not about going back to prohibition. This is about illegal sales, and illegal sales are defined on several levels. The ones that have the teeth that Kevin mentioned are sales to minors and sales near schools, and those are the things that are getting so much attention. And it's also vaping. I mean, I know very well one high school where they had to shut down the one of the bathrooms because they knew kids were vaping there, between class. So we all have none of us who are engaged in this are naive about what kids do and what happens. What we're trying to do, my personal, as I put it to people, is I want these stores to really have to think twice especially before they sell to a kid. Before they do anything illegal, as Seema pointed out, but especially before they sell to a kid. I want them really to have to think twice about it. Kevin.
I just want to underscore again, it's also the marketing and advertising to these kids that are enticed into these storefronts. John, we heard from a couple parents one of them that was with their child, and they were told to come on in the store and take, enjoy some goodies. And the store manager did not see that the parent was right around the corner with the child. And this was a place that was selling illegal cannabis.
Yeah, no, it's really, and I think Brendan put up a recent meeting, a picture of a bag of gummy bears that say gummy candy. And then down in the corner of the bag, it says 650 grams or milligrams. I'm not sure how it's measured of THC. Candy. Okay.
Like the place right across the street from a school that will go unnamed, but it's in our district.
Right.
It's a middle school. The name of the store is Slurpee, so that you have kids saying, "Mommy, I want to go get a Slurpee. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to get a Slurpee." It's a smoke shop selling cannabis within 500 feet of a school. Well, not anymore. Let's hope it stays that way.
Yeah, one victory. Okay. Claire, I yield the floor back to the chair, and I appreciate your time and, time to speak here.
No problem. Yeah, I think it's obviously a hot topic, and I appreciate you leading the discussion, and we'll continue it as more comes out. Yes, thank you again, John. I think in an interest of time, I will waive my report. But if anyone has any old or new business, you can raise your hand right now. Okay, I don't see any old or new business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Claire, I have one question. I just want to make
Sorry.
sure
No
for
problem.
that nail salon workers resolution, just to be clear, you and Susan are writing that together?
Yes, that sounds good. Susan, I'll connect with you on email. And again, feel better. But yes, we'll collaborate on it.
Okay, just make a note of that. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, and doesn't need a second, but thank you anyway. Seeing no further business, our meeting is adjourned at 8:00.